What if one single Grin could flip an entire season upside down? That's exactly what happened when Bria Hartle collided with Sophie Cunningham and walked away with a smile that fans will never forget. For some, it was a cruel smirk in the face of another player's pain. For others, just a bad moment caught on camera. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just an accident on the court. It became the story that dominated the WNBA and sent shockwaves far beyond the game itself. The night started like any other game, with both teams battling for position and momentum swinging back and forth. Sophie Cunningham, one of the Fever's most reliable players, was doing what she always does, holding her ground, playing tough defense, and keeping her energy high. Then came the moment that nobody saw coming. Bria Hartle, driving aggressively through the lane, cut straight into traffic. In the blink of an eye, bodies collided, and Cunningham's right knee bent awkwardly under the weight. The sound of her body hitting the hardwood sent a chill through the arena. Fans froze as Sophie clutched at her leg, her expression twisted with pain. The trainers rushed onto the court, helping her up as she leaned heavily on their shoulders. Every step looked agonizing. In that instant, the game felt secondary. But then, cameras shifted to Bria Hartle, and that's where the real controversy began. Hartle wasn't scowling. She wasn't concerned. Instead, she flashed what looked unmistakably like a grin. To many, it was a sinister smile at the worst possible moment. And just like that, one play turned into a firestorm, as the internet erupted over whether it was an accident or something darker. At first, the arena was silent, fans trying to process what had just happened. Sophie Cunningham was down, trainers at her side, and everyone feared the worst. But when the replays began rolling, the silence quickly shifted into something else. Slow motion showed every painful detail. The collision, the unnatural bend of Cunningham's knee, the grimace spreading across her face as she crumpled to the floor. It was hard to watch. And yet, the broadcast didn't just stop there. It cut back to Bria Hartle. That's when people saw it. The grin. To the live audience, it looked like nothing short of mockery. Within seconds, screenshots of Hartle's expression started flooding social media. Fans blasted her for being reckless, calling her smile heartless and disgusting. The timing couldn't have been worse. Cunningham was being helped off the court, her season hanging in doubt, while Hartle looked as though she found amusement in the chaos. Even Indiana's head coach, Stephanie White, admitted later that her gut reaction was pure disbelief. She described the moment with just 2 words: "Holy SHT." And really, that summed up what everyone was thinking. Shock was giving way to rage, and the narrative around Bria Hartle was changing by the second. The outrage didn't stop with fans online. It spread quickly to Sophie Cunningham's own family. Her sister took to social media almost immediately, blasting the referees for ignoring what she saw as a dangerous and deliberate play. To her, this wasn't just bad luck. It was negligence. She demanded accountability and questioned why officials let the game continue without even reviewing the collision. Then Sophie's mother weighed in, going a step further. In a now-deleted post, she accused Bria Hartle of being completely out of control, a player whose recklessness had gone unchecked for far too long. The fact that she later took it down didn't erase the impact. It showed how deep the anger ran inside Cunningham's camp. Fever fans echoed those feelings. They weren't just upset about losing one of their leaders, they felt the league itself had failed them. They pointed out how players often get fined for speaking out against officiating, yet obvious lapses in protection kept slipping through the cracks. For many, this was the last straw. This wasn't just about one play anymore. It had become a bigger question. Was the WNBA doing enough to keep its stars safe, or were players being left exposed to unnecessary risks? If this had been any other player, the reaction might have been different. A grin could have been brushed off as nerves, adrenaline, or even a misunderstood camera angle. But this wasn't just anyone, it was Bria Hartle. And Hartle already carried a reputation that made the smile impossible to ignore. Fans quickly dug up receipts. Earlier in the year, she was caught on camera yanking Angel Reese's hair during a rebound, sparking an on-court scuffle that had both benches fired up. In another game, she clashed with Rebecca Allen, a confrontation so heated it led to her ejection. And those weren't isolated incidents. She'd been involved in dust-ups with Skylar Diggins and others, leaving a trail of fiery altercations that many fans still remembered vividly. None of these moments alone would have defined her career. But when strung together, they painted a picture. A player who pushed the limits of physical play, sometimes crossing the line. So when the cameras caught her grinning as Sophie Cunningham limped off in pain, people didn't see coincidence. They saw confirmation. To them, this wasn't an accident caught in a bad frame. It was part of a bigger pattern, and Bria Hartle's reputation was now on trial. Once the Grin hit social media, the verdict was swift. Bria Hartle wasn't just a player anymore. She was the villain. Clips of her past incidents resurfaced instantly, edited together into reels that spread like wildfire. One second she was tugging Angel Reese's hair, the next she was jawing at Skylar Diggins, and finally, she was smirking as Sophie Cunningham hobbled off the court. The message was clear. This wasn't a one-time slip. This was who Bria Hartle really was. Fans piled into the comments with outrage. Dirtiest player in the league. No respect for the game. Suspend her. Those were just a few of the recurring themes. Analysts jumped in too, connecting dots between her history and the Cunningham collision, suggesting the league had no choice but to act. Headlines described the Grin as the smoking gun, the moment that crystallized years of suspicion into a single narrative. What stung most for fans wasn't just Hartle's smile. It was the silence that followed. No immediate suspension, no public statement from the league. For Fever supporters, it felt like proof that accountability didn't exist. And that silence only amplified the outrage, pushing Hartle deeper into the role of basketball's most controversial figure. For the Indiana Fever, Sophie Cunningham's injury couldn't have come at a worse time. Their roster was already hanging by a thread. Caitlin Clark, their superstar rookie, was sidelined. Ari McDonald and Sydney Colson had both been ruled out for the season. And now, one of the team's toughest leaders was being carried to the locker room, her status uncertain. The weight of the moment wasn't lost on the fans. This wasn't just another injury. It felt like the final blow to a season already plagued with setbacks. Cunningham wasn't just a scorer. She was a glue player, a leader whose intensity kept the Fever competitive even when the odds stacked against them. Losing her meant more than losing points on the board. It meant losing stability, toughness, and confidence in the locker room. As Hartle's Grin replayed endlessly online, Fever supporters couldn't shake the feeling that their team had been targeted. Their frustration shifted from anger at Hartle to despair over the season itself. With so many players gone, how could Indiana possibly stay afloat? The scoreboard didn't help either. Midway through the game, the Fever trailed by 21 points. For many, it looked like the unraveling moment, the point where their season would collapse for good. Just when it looked like Indiana's season was about to crumble, something remarkable happened. Down by 21 points against one of the league's most physical teams, the Fever seemed finished. The roster was battered, their energy drained, and their best players were missing. But then Kelsey Mitchell decided she wasn't going to let the night end that way. After a quiet first half with only 4 points, Mitchell came out of halftime on fire. Shot after shot fell, each one more improbable than the last. By the final buzzer, she had scored 34 points in the second half alone, finishing with a career-high 38. Every basket felt like a lifeline, dragging the Fever closer and closer to a comeback nobody thought possible. She wasn't alone, either. Aaliyah Boston delivered a dominant double-double, controlling the paint against Connecticut's bruising frontcourt. Odyssey Sims added 19 points and 7 assists, running the offense with fearless energy. And when Lexi Hull rose up in overtime and buried a corner three, the crowd erupted. The impossible was happening. Against all odds, the Fever stormed back to win 99-93 in overtime, pulling off the largest comeback in franchise history. From despair to glory, it was a night Indiana fans will never forget. When the final buzzer sounded, it wasn't just relief, it was disbelief. The Indiana Fever had pulled off the biggest comeback in their history, but the real story unfolded in the moments after the game. Inside the locker room, head coach Stephanie White stood in front of her team, her voice heavy with pride, telling them they had just proven what resilience really looked like. "We will never be counted out," she said, her words hitting harder than any highlight reel. Even players who weren't on the court joined in the celebration. Caitlin Clark, still away from the team, sent a short but powerful message on social media. "Battled, battled, battled. So proud." Sophie Cunningham, despite facing an uncertain future with her knee, tweeted her own reaction, "Kelsey freaking Mitchell." Those posts showed unity, not bitterness. Proof that even in chaos, the Fever stood together. But outside that locker room, the narrative was still dominated by Hartle's Grin. Fans debated whether she should face suspension, while critics questioned if the league was doing enough to protect its stars. The Fever's resilience had stolen the night, but the shadow of controversy refused to fade. In the end, this wasn't just a game. It was a night that exposed fault lines running deep through the league. Bria Hartle's collision with Sophie Cunningham could have been remembered as an unfortunate accident, the kind of play that happens in any physical sport. But the Grin changed everything. To her critics, it was the mask slipping, confirmation that she was the WNBA's dirtiest player. To others, it was nothing more than a badly timed expression, fuel for a narrative that spiraled out of control. The fallout has left one question hanging. Should Hartle face suspension? Fans and analysts alike argue that the league has to send a message, not just for this play, but for the pattern they believe it represents. On the other side, supporters claim the moment has been exaggerated, that a single freeze frame shouldn't define an entire career. Meanwhile, the Fever carry on. Their unity in the face of chaos, capped by the greatest comeback in franchise history, gave them an identity bigger than any single controversy. But the shadow of that smile still lingers, dividing fans, fueling debates, and leaving everyone to wonder. Was it just coincidence? Or the clearest sign yet that the WNBA has found its ultimate villain?